So what if you could connect your brain to a computer without ever, drilling a hole in your skull? That is the incredible promise of a revolution that's happening right now in brain-computer interfaces, or BCIs. And believe it or not, it all starts with something as simple as a needle.
Yeah, this quote, it really cuts right to the chase, doesn't it? For years, the whole story around BCIs has been dominated by this idea of high-risk, super invasive surgery. But now, there's this completely different approach that's flipping the script, taking a path of least resistance to read our minds.
Okay, so to really get why this new method is such a huge deal, we've got to first look at the old way of doing things, the established and, let's be honest, kind of terrifying way.
So this is the method you've probably heard about, right? It's the one companies like Neuralink are famous for. It's called a craniotomy, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Surgeons literally remove a piece of your skull to place a device with these tiny little electrodes right onto the surface of your brain. I mean, the whole idea is to get the absolute clearest signal you possibly can, straight from the source.
But, and you can probably guess this, going in like that comes with some major risks. You've got the obvious danger of infection or direct trauma to the brain tissue itself. But maybe the biggest long-term problem is something called the foreign body response. See, your brain is incredibly smart. It knows when something's there that shouldn't be, and it immediately goes on the defensive and starts to fight back.
So that begs the question, what if you didn't have to break down the door? What if you could get to the brain by using the body's own built-in infrastructure? Well, that leads us to a brilliantly simple, yet incredibly powerful idea.
Right, so instead of drilling a hole, this new method is all about using the body's own vascular highway, that incredible network of veins and arteries we all have. The analogy I love is this. Imagine the brain is a fortified city. Instead of trying to smash through the walls, you're just hopping on the subway system that already runs right into the city center.
And this is the amazing piece of tech that makes that journey possible. It's called the Stentrode, and it's basically this brilliant mashup of two pieces of medical tech we've been using for ages. It takes a stent, which doctors use all the time to open up blood vessels, and weaves a flexible mesh of tiny sensors right into it. And it's made from this smart material called nitinol, which lets it be squished down and then pop back open to its original shape.
And because the design is so clever, the whole procedure is almost like plug and play. A doctor makes a tiny incision, usually in the neck, to get into the jugular vein. From there, they just guide a catheter with a compressed stentrode inside all the way up into the brain. They park it in a big vein sitting right on top of the motor cortex. That's the part of your brain that controls movement. Then they just pull back the catheter, the stentrode expands, and it gently presses against the vessel wall. And that's it. No drill, no open skull. It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
Okay, but this super elegant solution immediately brings up a pretty big question, right? If you're not actually touching the brain, how good can this signal really be? It's a bit like trying to eavesdrop on a conversation happening in the next room.
And this is really the make or break question for this whole approach. Can you actually figure out the complex language of neurons when you're listening through the wall of a blood vessel? For a long time, the critics were saying, no way, the signal is going to be too weak, too muffled to be of any real use.
The technical term for this whole problem is the signal-to-noise ratio. Think of that blood vessel wall like a muffler. It takes those sharp, clear electrical spikes from individual neurons and turns them into more of a fuzzy collective hum. So the raw data you're getting just isn't as clean as what you'd get from an implant sitting right on the brain.
But this is where modern tech comes in with a totally game-changing solution. If the raw signal is fuzzy, well, you just need a smarter way to listen. And that smarter way is machine learning. See, the AI algorithms don't actually need to hear every single neuron firing. Instead, they're trained to listen for the overall patterns, these unique spectral signatures of a thought. It's kind of like how you can recognize a song just from the first few chords in the rhythm, right? You don't need to hear every single individual note. The AI learns that this specific electrical hum means move the cursor up, and that one means click. It decodes the intention from the collective noise and translates it into a digital command with startling accuracy. So when you put it all together, this less invasive procedure with this incredibly powerful AI, you start to see some huge long-term advantages. And it all comes back to how the device plays with the brain's natural defense system. Okay, let's circle back to that foreign body response we talked about earlier. The technical name for it is glial scarring. When you stick a device directly into brain tissue, your brain's immune cells basically see this foreign object and go into overdrive, building up a wall of scar tissue all around it. And that scar tissue acts like an insulator, making the signal weaker and weaker over time, until, eventually, it can fail completely.
And here's the kicker. Here's the really crucial point. Because the Stentrode never actually pokes through into the brain tissue, it doesn't trigger that aggressive immune response. By staying inside the blood vessel, the brain basically doesn't see it as a threat. What this means is that these devices could potentially last for a much, much longer time inside the body than the ones that are drilled in.
And this isn't just theory. We're talking about a real, profound impact on people's lives. In clinical trials, patients with severe paralysis from diseases like ALS have used this tech to get their digital freedom back. I mean, people are sending emails, they're shopping online, they're texting with their loved ones, all just by thinking. It's literally a lifeline back to the world.
So what we're seeing here is this really fascinating split in the road. Two completely different philosophies about where this tech is headed.
You've got one path, which is the high-risk, high-reward approach of drilling straight into the brain. And then you have this other path, the safer, more scalable one that uses the body's own plumbing.
This chart really spells out the differences, and it's all about trade-offs. Look at signal quality. Yeah, the invasive method is super high, while the endovascular one is more moderate. But then look at the other columns. Risk, longevity. The endovascular approach sidesteps the big problems of brain trauma and scarring. And maybe the biggest difference maker is scalability. You need an elite neurosurgeon for a craniotomy. But thousands of radiologists can already perform the vein procedure, which means it could reach way more people.
And when you get right down to it, they're not even really playing the same game. A company like Neuralink is chasing this grand vision of a future where humans and AI merge, available to everyone. Synchron, the company that makes the Stentrode, has a different focus. They want to create something more like a pacemaker, but for the brain, a reliable medical device to help people who need it most, right now.
But here's where it gets really interesting for all of us. Because as this technology gets safer and easier, it stops being just a medical treatment for a few. It opens up a Pandora's box of questions that we all need to start thinking about.
I mean, think about it. If getting a BCI becomes as routine as a minor medical procedure, what happens to our neural privacy? Could your brain activity be harvested for neuromarketing? Could this create a whole new kind of societal divide? Not between the rich and poor, but between the augmented and the unaugmented. These are not sci-fi questions anymore.
And that's really the big question we want to leave you with. History shows us that the least invasive, safest technology usually wins in the long run. So when brain upgrades become this safe and this easy, the question isn't if we'll do it, but who gets one? And maybe more importantly, who gets to decide?